Right.
So I am here with Jena LaFlamme, and Jena is the author of Pleasurable Weight Loss, which is a phenomenal book. And we will talk about pleasure today because Jena is a pleasure coach. But we're going to go a little deeper into the personal experience of pleasure just for pleasure's sake. So Jena, thank you for being with me.
Pleasure, Dawn. Thanks for having me back again.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Your interview in my last series was incredibly popular. So I'm happy to have you here today. And you know what, Jenna, I'd love if we could start off by looking at kind of early in your journey of embodiment, how you began to tiptoe into the pleasure space and what shifted on the inside as you developed that relationship with yourself.
Well, Dawn, I think I was really blessed at 18. I met a man who became one of my best friends, at a certain point, my lover also, and a mentor and also a father figure in a way. And sadly, he passed away last year, just about a year ago, from an undiagnosed heart condition. So I'm very sad about that. But I met him, and he actually had blonde curly hair and blue eyes. We looked like kin. And I was drawn to him, and he said, "Come and visit me in the rainforest where he lives." And he mentored me in nature wisdom, in what we call deep ecology, which is this belief that we are part of the earth. Humans are one of the many organisms, not the, we're the apex predator, but not the most important species.
Yes.
And it's just that the ants, the trees, the birds, we're all equal in Mother Nature, which is so different from the Judeo-Christian upbringing I had, which literally in church they taught, God gave the earth to the humans to do with whatever they please kind of message. So that really influenced me hugely. And I used to visit him, and around the same time, I came in contact with this book by Starhawk called Spiral Dance. And she spoke about nature-based religion. So I was very open to this as I was very curious about nature. And the quote goes, all pleasure, harm it none, is in honor of the goddess. And it basically says pleasure is prayer, pleasure is worship. And why is this? The concept is that when you're actually enjoying life, first of all, to be in pleasure, you need to be present.
Hmm.
And when you're actually present with life, you're in a meditation essentially. That's what meditation is presence.
Yes.
So when you're in presence with the gifts of life, the creator, the goddess, whatever you want to call it, is smiling. Is like, yes, you are enjoying my creation. You are worshiping me. You are honoring me by enjoying yourself. Harm it none. So that clicked profoundly, and I understood pleasure. I was only 19 when I read that, maybe even 18. That pleasure is a spiritual path. And then over the years, I found more and more teachings to reinforce this. At a certain point, I sort of lost it when I went to India. There were these counter teachings that were saying, oh, desire is the cause of the root of all suffering. That's more a Buddhist angle, but I've come to really understand that as attachment, which is that like I must have it, and that can get into that pleasure actually harming someone when you're so determined and attached to have an outcome. But desire actually is desiring something. It's not necessarily being having a desire fulfilled. It ideally is, but sometimes it's just the wanting itself, the desiring um, that has a value and has a transformational quality to it.
I love that. Jenna, what did you notice in your own being as you walked this path and cultivated this relationship? Can you talk about the shift in your aliveness that came out of that journey?
Definitely. Well, I have a strong memory of from this man who was a mentor to me. He would give me these sensual massages. Now, he was quite a bit older. I was not desiring or ready to reciprocate, but to just receive a sensual massage where I didn't wasn't required to do anything back to him was really transformational for me. And I remember writing him a letter after one of these massages and saying, I want you to know I'm not that kind of girl. And and I look back, I was ashamed. I was ashamed that it was wrong or dirty or bad that I was in having so much pleasure. So I had to get through that layer. And really, I think it took years and years to really, really, really get to the root of releasing that shame and guilt that there's something wrong with pleasure. But for sure, there's a vitality, there's a spring in your step, there's your cells just singing. And hopefully, everyone has had the experience that when they have an orgasm or an orgasmic experience, that like a great idea pops into their head. Or the cliche is in the shower, right? You get your great ideas in the shower, people say. Well, why? You're having the hot water, you're relaxing. It's one of those places that people just let go and finally have a moment to themselves. Like you can't really multitask in the shower. You just focus on presence with the pleasure of the hot water and your body and the nice smell of the soap or whatever it is. So it became clear that these moments of pleasure seem to heighten my intelligence, my awareness, my aliveness, and there actually is a huge amount of science backing that up in terms of the brain vagina connection. Dr. Naomi Wolf speaks about this extensively in her book Vagina, a biography, that when you stimulate the nerves in the vagina, in the cervix, all of this, that it affects the brain, and a well-pleasured, well-sexed woman is actually more intelligent, and vice versa. Someone who's had sexual trauma and trauma to the tissues down there, but even verbal trauma, if you've been told your vagina is dirty, sex is bad, and these beliefs are internalized, it over time can be like a form of brain damage that really diminishes our thinking, our executive functioning, and our intelligence, our discernment to know what's true and what's brainwashing.
It's really interesting to just connect some of the pieces that you were talking about because one of the things that I heard you say is how like earth-centered this perspective was. You're with your mentor, with the teachings of spiral dance, and almost like the word that comes to me is grounded. And then,
Mhm.
in Naomi Wolf's book, I don't know that she uses the term, but like when a woman's disconnected from her pelvic floor, she's not very grounded. I think it's part of that limited access to our intelligent capacity. There's an increase in the anxiety, an increase in the
Yeah,
depression, but I'd never quite put it together quite so much that it's like, oh, she's not grounded.
yeah. She talks about it in the book about women in Africa who have been extremely violated through like warfare, rape as a warfare
Mhm.
tactic, and she describes them as almost floating around, which is the opposite of
Yeah.
grounded. Like they're just not all there. They're so traumatized. Hmm.
It's so painfully common that women, whether they've had, as you mentioned, some sort of verbal trauma, somebody said, oh, that, like I was thinking earlier about almost like growing up hearing jokes about like the fishy ice chest or, Kermit's fingers smelling bad. And, so whether it's relatively minor or if it's overt, rape or abuse, I don't know that there are many women alive that don't have some ceiling to work through with regard to pleasure. And you were just mentioning that it was a years long process for you
Hmm.
to cultivate that relationship. Are you willing to share more about what that process looked like of actually expanding your own capacity to be with pleasure before some internal narrative said, no, that's enough, you're cut off?
Hmm. Yes, I'd be happy to. I just want to say what you're talking about an internal narrative cutting it off is spot on. And most people don't realize that it's the mind chiming in with some nasty comment, or it's not even nasty. It could just be like, you should check your phone right now. It's just a distracting comment. And I call this the pleasure threshold. You used the word pleasure ceiling before.
Mhm.
And everyone knows there's a pain threshold, how much pain you can handle. And some people have a higher one, some have a lower one, but we're all pretty much aware of that concept. But the concept of a pleasure threshold, I think, is quite unknown. And essentially, we're able to uh, sustain a certain amount of sensation before our mind chimes in and says, this is not okay. So maybe if someone was spanking you and with the intention that it would be a fun, energizing thing, and one spank is too hard, it's like, oh, no. Okay, we know that's gone over the edge. Take it back a bit. But let's say you're having extreme pleasure, someone's doing something nice to you, or you're doing it to yourself, and you get to some higher peak octave of pleasure. And then, as I said, you may think, oh, I need to do something or just distract from the moment. It's not so obvious that it's your mind preventing you from going to that higher state of pleasure. So yeah,
Well, I was going to say, it reminds me of in my interview with Artemisia Devine, where we were talking about fantasies. She gave the example of receiving oral sex, and you get to the point where you're like, oh, that's enough for me. It's time for me to reciprocate.
yeah,
And I'm wondering, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's the threshold, isn't it?
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Sorry to
So
interrupt
I
you.
mean, my personal journey, I think I'm blushing a bit, like having sex positive people around me. I had a very sex positive partner in New York. This is, gosh, more than 20 years ago, who took me to these naughty parties. And like, oh, I remember the first time I went, it was like a stress response just walking into the room. I'm like, oh my God, get me out of here kind of thing. But we were in there and I stuck around and we'd gone with a friend and she and I just kind of stuck together and played around and it was cathartic and it was transformational. And so seeing other examples of other people being shameless, and I say shameless in a positive term here, to be guiltless, to be shameless, to know there's nothing wrong with me, I'm not hurting anyone. This is an act of innocence. Eventually, I came across the term erotic innocence from a teacher, which is one of the main banners I love to wave. And it essentially refers to the body's intrinsic orientation, drive, impulse towards pleasure through all the senses that is innocent by the fact that it's visceral, it's of the body, whereas guilt and shame are of the mind. So the idea is that before your mind has time to chime in and say, "Oh, that's wrong against my religion. Oh, you really shouldn't. Oh, your mother. What are you doing?" The body is just like, I like it, or I don't like it. So some of expanding your pleasure threshold is creating this atmosphere, this ambiance container of erotic innocence, where you have your own inner bodyguard, so to speak, who is surveying the mind and saying, hey, mind, this is not your time. We can do a crossword later or watch TV or something, but this is the time for the body. So please just shh. And if voices come up, shh, just continue to turn them down and allow this opening.
Gina, do you think it's fair to say that this pleasure response is innate and that guilt and shame are learned, that they're not part of us?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we know that because we see animals, cats, dogs, babies, little kids. I have a 2-year-old. Wow, she'll do pleasurable things for herself. And because she doesn't have that influence that that's wrong or bad. So yes, the physical impulse is first in the evolutionary scale. And then the mind, we can call it the Johnny come lately on the evolutionary scale, but it likes to think it's first. The mind likes to think, oh, I'm the most important and you serve me. but really the body would be dead without the body. I call my body or the body the animal,
Hmm.
the female animal in terms of women. And this was a key that helped me on this journey of accepting pleasure and releasing guilt was is like this female animal is an entity that is the senses. Her language is pleasure and through all five senses. And who am I to project this guilt and shame on her and prevent her from, fulfilling herself?
So beautiful. When you work with people as a pleasure coach, what does the process look like, of cultivating that relationship? I mean, I'm almost curious, like in the really tangible sense, for somebody who's like, oh, this is not okay. Like, how do you support somebody in creating more space and then having more access to that part of themselves?
I just want to say one more thing about the other question before going on to that.
Okay.
That I think is important is as I went on my journey and was decreasing my guilt and shame and feeling good about my sexual expression, I still had this fear that if other people knew, they would reject me. And I went through this phase of about a year of one-on-one coming out. Let's say you were for tea, and I would say, Dawn, it's really hard for me to say this, but I want to tell you about my sexual explorations. I lived in New York City. There were plenty of opportunities for sexual exploration, and I took it like a research assignment. Mama Gina talks about pleasure research. I was like, yes, I'm going to go to that club or that party, or I'm going to have this experience and for research. And so I started telling this friend and that friend the other. Only one person out of dozens gave me a bad reaction, and she had had a lot of trauma. And I was able to just let that roll off my back. But everyone else was supportive. And I wasn't just willy-nilly telling someone on the subway. I was like really selectively telling my friends, the people I wanted their approval. And by keeping it secret, I couldn't get their approval. Even if I thought it was good between me and I always wondered, was I acceptable? Would I be approved of by my friends? And then, so that process of having communities, having a mentor, you can start with people that you know are going to be on board.
Mhm.
You take the least risky um, outs, coming outs
Yeah.
first, and then you'll feel like you're not alone on this. You have a whole tribe that are cheering for you.
So important. Thank you for adding that.
You're welcome. So back to your question about what are things we can do? Was that it?
Yeah, and how do you work with somebody to expand that capacity?
So something simple you can do is breathe in and out with an open jaw. And I put my hands there to almost push my jaw down to show me what an open jaw feels like. If you can push your hands in here, you can actually make, yeah, that's it. Got it. I don't know how quickly you'll feel the effect, but the opposite is clenched jaw. And so often when we're in a sexual act or sensual act or just in life, like I have to stop myself too. I'm like, this is clenching, this holding is like a protection. And my experience has been that we're desensitized to pleasure when we're gripping like that. For pleasure, for you to lift your pleasure ceiling, to lift your pleasure threshold, we need to be an open channel. So
Yeah.
an even more advanced breath you can do, they call it circular breathing. You breathe in and without a pause. Usually there's a pause between the inhalation and exhalation. You again exhale and inhale. And you start to feel a little bit dizzy and tingling. You can get what's called tetany in the breathwork world. Have you heard about that?
Hmm.
And you're really feeling a lot of sensations. And then you're starting to increase your capacity to stay present with the sensations. And first of all, you might go, ooh, I'm tingly, like shut it down. And then eventually these weird sensations start to become more become more habituated to them. And then more pleasurable sensations can become available. So something as simple as that is breathing with an open mouth. Like, let's say a woman has a hard time reaching an orgasm or an orgasmic state. If she does that breathing while self-pleasuring or while receiving pleasure, it can just change the whole game. And actually, you would know this on a biological level. There's a correlation between the throat and the yoni.
Yeah.
And when we release the jaw, soften the throat, I've had the feeling like I found an extra room in my vagina. Like there was a whole left wing that I didn't even know was there.
Yeah.
The west wing. I'm like, oh my gosh, where? Obviously, there was no physical extra space, but energetically, it just felt like this opening in my pelvic floor that was initiated by the opening in my throat and jaw, that was initiated by the breath work.
Oh, that's wonderful. And so accessible. So accessible. I love that. And then, Jenna, you're a belly dancer. So, where did your explorations in dance? It's like one of the things that popped into my head when you mentioned the book Spiral Dance. It's like, oh,
Mm,
is that belly dancing? Is that something different? But I'm curious how some of these movement practices began to get woven in to to your relationship with body. So we all know we can move from a very disconnected place. I see it in a lot of yoga studios. We're very like rigid about the way we do yoga,
it's true.
but dance is different or can be
Mhm.
different.
It can be different. Well, I was actually in the yoga class in India and like doing a yoga teacher training. I'm doing a lot of yoga, and this belly dancer came into the class, and somehow she offered me a belly dance private. So I, of course, said yes. And I felt like these movements. I was like, oh, this is a homecoming. This is a language my body knows. It just felt right. And then the next day, my abs and different things were all aching, and my ego of like, oh, I'm a yogi and I'm constantly doing yoga, but this one less than 60-minute dance class totally kicked my ass. It was quite humbling, and I was like, wow, this is also a great workout. And it took me many years, but finally I found this belly dance camp and I went to it and I found these belly dance DVDs and I started practicing at home and eventually found a belly dance school in New York. And I mean, they're archetypal movements, figure eights, circles, spirals, moving the hips, flourishes with the hands. They say that belly dance is intended to prepare the body for childbirth. And that makes sense to me. And also simply just to feel good,
Yeah.
to feel feminine, to feel it's that contrast of the smoothness and then the sharp movements. And it's it's expressive. It's definitely sensual and sexual, and it's something I love to do as a foreplay, to dance for my partner, or just to dance really for me to get the juices moving.
As you begin to play with all of these things, I know from pleasurable weight loss about the metabolic impacts of that, but I'm wondering if you can talk about like your confidence, your self-expression, as you started to kind of come out of the metaphorical closet and tell your friends, like, I'm in this exploration, as you found touch with your own body and your sense of pleasure. How did you notice that impact your being in the world?
Can I talk about one other dance thing before we go on to
Yeah,
that?
absolutely.
I was cut off. I was going to talk about. Dawn, another dance form I want to tell you about is partner dance.
Mm.
And two particular genres I've gone deep in. Salsa dancing was my first. They call it the gateway drug of partner dance because it's quite ubiquitous. That led me to Brazilian zouk dancing.
Oh,
And if you've never heard of Brazilian Zouk, it's a bit like salsa, but more sensual and it's more flexible in terms of the music you can dance it to. Like you could put on R&B or hip hop or a lot of pop music and it will work. Whereas salsa, you really need salsa music.
Got it.
And it's gorgeous. It's almost like doing belly dance with a partner. And you once you have the basic vocabulary and a baseline confidence, you can go to what they call social dancing, and it's the 3 minute love affair. You say, "Hi, would you like to dance?" Yes, you dance. Maybe one, two, or three songs, and then you say thank you, and then you go on to the next. And it builds this confidence because at one time I was actually more than once was sexually violated, like from a stranger really aggressing me. And I had fear of even, that PTSD of even touch, like being intimate with a stranger, even with clothes on at a dance club, may have been felt threatening at a certain point. But eventually you realize, okay, this is safe. I can say no if I'm not in the middle of the dance. If I'm not feeling it, I just say thank you, I'm out. Um, and just knowing you can come together, you can separate, you can choose yes or no to the dance, and you can let your body surrender, you can let your mind rest in this form of erotic innocence that turn down the inner critic. Oh, I did the step wrong, na na na. Just carry on, dance, feel, move, express. Um, in partner dance, there are socials all over the world, and it's something I highly recommend. It's really nice to get private lessons also with a good teacher to accelerate the learning curve. And then once you're at a certain point, you really learn by doing at the dance socials. And often they're in dance schools. Sometimes they're in clubs, but often they're in dance schools where there's no alcohol and it's a very kind of wholesome atmosphere. Actually, clubs are renowned for, you know, hating these dance parties because people don't drink. They want to be on their game with their movements. They don't want to be sloppy drunks and they drink water and the dance is the drug that gets you high. That it really elevates your feeling and certainly a huge amount of aliveness and vitality. Like times I've like been dragging myself to get out of bed in the morning and then I would go to a dance, Zouk dance, stay up later than usual and wake up earlier than usual with that whoosh, because my spine has been moving and everything is awakened.
Thank you for sharing that. That's so great. Um, is there anything else you want to say about that, or can we talk about confidence and how you move through the world as this body-centered
Yeah,
woman?
let's talk about that.
Yeah. I'd love to hear how you felt yourself shift as you cultivated this relationship with your body, as you owned your right to pleasure and you started to ask your mind to back up a little bit. Um, what did you notice about your confidence, your choices, how tall you felt walking down the street, any piece of it? Like what were the shifts that were available?
I think as my guilt subsided into the background, what was left was this naturally erotically innocent state. Also, as I would like really be present with my female animal,
Mhm.
let's say I would meet you and I would be like, oh, hi on the mind level, but also I would feel like, hi on the body level. Like, not as a sexual come on, just as like, hi, I'm an animal. Oh, hi, I'm an animal. And I was in the sparkle in the eyes or just in the smile. And I felt as I would have that sense of myself as a mind and a body, as an intelligent, I like to say a wise, intelligent, creative, decision-making animal, then I had the esteem. It's like me and her. Like we are invincible.
Mhm.
We don't put ourselves down. And and you can join too.
Yeah.
So I've always aspired in my confidence for it to have this echo or a little whisper of a you can too. That it's not power over, it's power with, it's confidence with.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. I think so many women are afraid. I think, well, there are two things that I think stop women. If we could speak to your experience of them, it would be wonderful. I think one thing that stops women is fear of being judged by other women. You know, if they
Hmm.
really own their beauty and their sexuality. And the other is that owning their beauty will be misconstrued as an invitation where not intended. And I'm just wondering if you have thoughts on how to navigate that so that those concerns aren't getting in the way.
Yes. So those are extremely common concerns. I'm really glad you brought them up. I've identified those as well. So with unwanted sexual attention, the ability to say no is critical. And there's this concept from Aikido that's called the intimate decline, because women are taught that saying no is akin to saying like F off or like I'm gonna kill you or something very negative. Like it's like a hyper no because we're so indoctrinated to be yes girls who oh yes yes yes. So this concept of the intimate decline is that you can say energetically, I accept or appreciate your desire, but that's a no for me. So you're not shaming the person like F off, how could you even want that from, it's just like a very firm and clear heart-centered no. No thanks, you could say. But you don't even have to say thanks. You don't have to be that polite, but just no. To know that you can have no in your back pocket is very important because many women, they might like to make out or cuddle, but they don't want to go all the way. But they're scared that once things get going, they won't be able to say no. So then they say no to the makeout that they actually would have liked and miss out on the whole array. Naomi Wolf calls this the feminine array, and I love that term. It's the kissing, it's the stroking the hair, it's the nibbling the ears, the whisper sweet things in my ears, it's the foreplay, but not even the genital foreplay, just the foreplay, the core. Maybe she calls it core play. I'm not sure. Um, and th those are lovely and harmless if you are firm in your knowledge that you can say no at any point and have it be a decisive no, not a no that gets pushed around. I think guys are often taught when they say no, you just like push more and eventually they'll say yes. But to know that you're a martial artist, of the spirit, and your no is serious, it's grounded
Yeah.
and available at any time. And I had a friend who was so scared of saying no. Her therapist told her, say no's.
Mm.
You need to say no, no, just say no's. 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 It's hilarious. That was her way of breaking through
Yeah.
to be able to be fluent in no. And now she's extremely good at no.
It's great. You know, I think it's worth mentioning that even in long-term partnerships, what you're talking about is still really relevant. It's not like,
Mm,
oh, I just met somebody and he might misunderstand. Just
yeah.
yesterday, I was talking to a patient who had, she came to me, she's like, I have no libido. And one of the things we talked about is like set limits with your husband so that you're free to touch. Right? Like, because when we operate as women, as though, if I rub your shoulders, then I'll be obligated to have sex with you when you want sex, then I'm never going to touch your shoulders. And it creates this barrier to all kinds of connection. But if you could just say, this is where we're stopping tonight, and I'm now free to play all the way up to that boundary because the boundary is real. And I find that it
Yes.
really creates an opportunity for touch and connection that doesn't get, morphed into penis and vagina intercourse.
Exactly.
It's like we get to expand the definition of sex that way too, because it's like, oh, we can be sexual, right? Without limiting ourselves to what's more conventionally considered sex.
definitely. Or even say we're gonna go until I say stop. You could have a preset boundary that we can go up to here, or if you know that you can say no at any point and that will be respected, you could just say, well, let's just go until it feels like a no.
Mm, beautiful,
And
beautiful.
then with women, I think it really is what I said before, having this, you can too. I am a mirror of your natural sexiness, like really internalizing. Um, they say, it takes one to know one. I love that phrase.
Mm,
Like, oh, you're a goddess. It takes one to know one. Or like, oh, you're so beautiful. Oh, I'm a shiny mirror of you.
yeah.
And just instead of hoarding that compliment, just reflecting it back. They say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I like
Mm,
that one too. I like, thank you. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Like, you see me because you are me. We are the goddess. We're
mhm,
all expressions of the the divine feminine. And you could say, oh, I'm here to give permission for you to feel that good too.
yeah.
Or
Jenna,
I'd
what
like you to have
I love,
permission to feel that good too.
yeah. What I love about this is that it's not deflecting the compliment. It's that's what I hear, at least that you
Yes.
fully take it in, you own it, and you give back, which is really different than I think what's really common is the dismissing of the compliment, where it's almost a rejection of it. And what you're talking about is not that.
No.
Yeah.
Because it's terrible. I hate rejecting a compliment. Then you're saying, no, no. Now the person has offered you something nice and you're criticizing them essentially or shutting them down. Now both of you, no one wins.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, when you can receive it and reflect it.
Yeah, that's so great. Thank you. It's gonna feel a little disjointed, but I realized that there's something I wanted to talk to you about, and we didn't earlier. We talked about it a little bit before we started recording, but the power of breast massage. Can we really just dive into why someone might? Like I think in the circles that we can pass, like it's so everyday. Like, of course, massage your breast, but I know so many women who think, what? Why? Like, if I'm not doing a breast exam, why would I do that? And so I'm curious if you could just walk through that as a tool and how, even the heart cervix connection, just touch.
Yeah,
Tell us about all of it.
I will. I'll tell you. And also at erotikinnocence.com, I have a free self breast massage guide. So that's absolutely available.
Great.
And I will say that I taught breast massage for years and years before I had a child and loved it and felt the benefits. But after breastfeeding, which I'm still breastfeeding my toddler,
Mm,
I have a whole new appreciation of breast massage. Yes, where the baby will latch on
mhm,
and instantly I sigh and this bliss starts to creep over me. And it's such a great invention by Mother Nature, the baby mother connection where we want to give the milk and they want to be close to us and protected and safe.
yeah,
So try breastfeeding. That's that's a great tip. But anyway, that's a very specific sliver of life for a few women. But it just in general, we can mimic that ourselves by touching our own breasts. Basically, there's a major oxytocin response where it's pleasure on tap. You mentioned there's a heart cervix connection. So the in Taoism, they say the heart, the breasts are the external representation of the heart.
mm,
So when we are, which first of all, I think is just so empowering. I wish, oh, that's your heart chakra right there.
mhm,
So when you are massaging your breast, it's like massaging your heart. It's reminding you of your capacity to love. First and foremost, to love yourself, to accept yourself, to allow joy to exist in your body, to be a compassionate being towards yourself, and then, of course, others, to your ability to love the world, all the creatures in it, the plants, the nature, have compassion for the suffering, and to be joyful, to have a good laugh, to have a good giggle. One of the steps in the breast massage, which I explained, is you kind of like bounce them a little bit. And it's just funny. It's just like, it's just hilarious to have this bouncy part of us, jiggly part, and the healing of laughter, the healing of putting a smile on your face, like we spoke about, which comes first, the pleasure or the judgments. Like when we smile, when like it brings happiness in. Also in Taoism, there's an exercise called the inner smile, where you imagine all your organs smiling and you smile on your face. So what I love about breast massage is it's so quick. You can do it in 5 minutes. You can even do it through your clothes, but with some oil directly on the skin is nicer. And for breastfeeding mothers who don't want it on the nipples,
Mhm.
which would be myself at the moment, you can just do it around. You can even do it without actually touching, just as an energetic, sort of light Reiki touch.
Do you pair that with the breathing that we talked about earlier?
Yes, you can pair it with the breathing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
How magical. Great. Do you have any other kind of ninja tools that you'd love to share for that reconnection process?
Well, having a dildo is something wonderful, which is very different from a vibrator,
Hmm.
which I'm not against vibrators. Some sex birds are, but like there have been, I'm gonna say, Stone Age dildos found. I don't know if that's exactly correct, but old sculptures of that are a dildo since time began, and you're gonna feel a lot better about yourself. You're going to enhance that brain vagina connection, your self-esteem, your belief in yourself, your confidence, your creativity. Everything will work. Of course, you could use your fingers, but having a handy dandy tool can be helpful too.
Great. Thank you for that. It's kind of funny because it's the one thing that has not come up in the whole series so far. I'm like, well, that's fascinating. Like, yeah, nobody's talked about a dildo yet. So thank you for that addition. And I guess I'm also curious, like, if you were speaking directly to the woman who's, let's just say at a point in her life where she's feeling really disconnected from her pleasure, either if she's maybe has a young kid and is feeling kind of touched out, or she's perimenopausal and her hormones are changing and she's kind of caught in a story around aging and that being a part of her past. Like if you could just speak directly to her, what what might you say about the importance of cultivating, embodying, and living in pleasure?
Well, I would say this is the path of the divine feminine, of the goddess. This is completely interrelated with female spirituality. You deserve it. I would encourage her to question each belief and find a workaround. I mean, I'm a touched out perimenopausal woman myself, so I'm completely in that category. Um, and yet still, there it's this never give up attitude. Okay, if you've had enough toddler touch, there could be another type of touch that actually feels really good. Don't
Yeah.
don't let it stop at toddler touch. Um, and okay, the perimenopausal. All right, check out the hormonal replacement therapy. I know you have another speaker on that. Like find solutions. Don't give up on yourself. Um, this is so important. This is your birthright. Moving towards pleasure means moving towards your intelligence and value your intelligence. I love this thought that we are a direct descendant of a cave woman and caveman. Like that's real. There is an unbroken line. If you're alive, that means you had an ancestor who was a woman in a cave and she was getting by with a fire and her flint or whatever. And I'd bet $1 million that she had zero bad body image. I bet that she did not have sexual shame. I bet that she did not reject herself, reject her pleasure, her orgasm, or touch. I bet she was really opportunistic and had her pleasure with this lover or that lover, and raised her kids with a pleasure positive, body positive attitude.
Mhm.
And we are their great 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 granddaughters and so on. Like we are their legacy. Let us put that positive foot forward to say, I will love this female animal, warts and all. I love that expression. The warts, the wrinkles, the rolls, whatever it is. And to know that when we compare ourselves with perfection, that's when the patriarchy is winning in our psyche. That's when we're throwing ourselves under a bus or letting ourselves be run over. Whereas when we go for the pleasure, go for the orgasm or the orgasmic energy, it doesn't have to be a climax in that sense that's modeled on a male concept of a male orgasm. But when we invite that orgasmic flow where we can just tingle walking across the street or actually partner dancing, one of the world famous partner dancers I studied with, she's like, "Do you know why I always have that smile on my face? Because she's famous for this smile." She's like, "It's because I'm rubbing my legs together. And you know what that rubs together?" We're like, "Oh, the whole," it's like the penny drops in the whole room. It's like she's letting herself feel that, feel her yoni pleasure. Can too when you're walking across climate. It's free. I'd say the most pleasurable things in life are free or almost free. If we think like good food and good sex and things, like a good meal is not that costly. It's not necessarily a luxury item.
Right.
And the world will be a better place if you are a pleasure activist.
Oh,
So find the support, take a stand for yourself, take a stand for other women, and it'll come back to you.
mhm.
And
Excellent.
return to your erotic innocence. Love that female animal with every cell you have because it will come back to you as vitality. Like I'm in my mid 40s, turning 47 this year, and I know I look a lot younger. I haven't done Botox or any of that. I do use a moisturizer, but I believe it's my spirit, my erotic innocence that just like lets that aging just kind of slide off me. I do use hormonal replacement therapy, and I really like that. That's made a big difference to me. So definitely an advocate for that. Uh, but essentially, the spirit stays young. One of my best friends is 86, and yes, she has wrinkles, but like, wow, her spirit is so fresh, so young, and she can have an orgasm. She said if she eats a marijuana gummy and meditates, she can have an orgasm without even touching herself.
Wow.
That's pretty awesome. And even without the marijuana gummies, she can get into
Yeah.
really high states of pleasure and bliss.
Mm. It's so incredible. And Jen, I really appreciate you normalizing like this aspect of, aging and embracing ourselves. As another woman in my mid 40s, I just think I actually think this is a really ripe time for women. There's this narrative that, the highlight of our lives was in our 20s and maybe early 30s. And I kind of call bullshit on that. Like, I
Mhm.
feel freer than I ever have as a woman in my mid 40s. And so I think this is the perfect time. I mean, however old you are, today is the perfect day to start having a more pleasurable relationship with
Yeah.
yourself, with your body, and with your life. So if you're in your 50s, if you're like Jenna and I, and you're in your mid 40s, or if you're 21 and listening to this, start now. right? Like that's really
Mm.
what
Yes,
I
exactly.
hear. But there is something so rejuvenating, right, about being in touch with yourself. So I appreciate that you highlighted that. Thank you for sharing yourself so generously and authentically with this community. I hope that everybody goes to Erotic Innocence and even that they pick up your book. Pleasurable Weight Loss made such a difference for me. I talk to patients about it all the time because so many people think that
Mm.
there's no way that they could have a pleasurable relationship with food that also has health benefits. And so, introducing those concepts, I think, are they're crucial to having health and vitality blend, rather than just pursuing health markers while being miserable about it. There's no point in that, right? Like we're here to feel alive, not to have pretty labs. And you really embody
Yeah,
that.
that's really true. Thank you. And if anyone wants to go to pleasurediet.com, I have a free 7 days of pleasurable weight loss guide. So it's not a diet, but it's having pleasure, a diet of pleasure, essentially.
Excellent. So we've got erotikinnocence.com,
Yes.
pleasureddiet.com,
Yes.
and then still Jena LaFlamme.com. We'll post
Yes.
all of that.
I'm going to do a 6 weeks of pleasurable weight loss course in June, early June, and I'm available for private coaching at any time.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Dawn.